Cecilia Dapa and her husband. We'll have details of the Attorney General's advice on this particular issue because the suspects were expected to have appeared in court today. That did not happen. We'll tell you the details of it. Also, the Bank of Ghana is looking forward to seeking recapitalization from government as a result of the huge losses it incurred in the 2020 fiscal year. How feasible is this, especially because government itself is broke, doesn't have money? The IMF, what is going to happen to the Bank of Ghana? Stay with us. We'll get into the details on Ghana Tonight. Also, one too many buildings collapsing in Ghana. The latest being the collapse of another building at Ofanko in Accra, claiming one life. And that involved a wall of that building as well. How do we avert these situations? Tonight, we engage facility management consultant on this issue. Well, we're very, very interactive as always. Let's hear from you because everything that we talk about here tonight has everything to do with you. The hashtag is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and Twitter. Let's get talking. I am Alfred Ocansey. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
President Akufo-Addo has denied claims that he's using party machinery to support the candidature of Vice President Dr. Bawumia ahead of the party's internal presidential election. He again denied claims that he's intimidating party members to back the Vice President. Addressing party communicators at the Jubilee House, he described their claims as baseless and malicious, adding that he has never endorsed any candidate.
The allegation is being made that the government is putting all its authority behind the vice president. I want to say in very clear terms to you and to the world, it is a false and malicious narrative. There's not a single truth to it. That's why I can beat my chest and I can say without any fear of contradiction, there's no one in the party, there is not a single person in the NPP who can say that I have asked him or her to support this or that aspirant.
One person has been confirmed dead and another in critical condition after a wall collapsed on them at a construction site at the Ofanko barrier near Accra. The tussle between tricycle operators and city authorities in Kumasi has intensified. Some tricycle operators blocked roads to protest their ban from the central business district.
It's unlawful, but you say first Aquina, Abia, Yebeti and Ka, a man pay for no, or more sorrow, I say, your message I pass a car. No. Over back room, area one, not Lela, Epaquaya, a packet, a Yuma. It's Praia who goes that traffic. You want to get me for the ground.
2 more suspects have been picked up in connection with the thefts of monies and valuable items from the home of former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapa. Deputy Superintendent of Police DSP Emmanuel Nyameche told the court the 5 accused persons could not show up in court because police investigators had traveled to Tamale where the arrests were made. The Bank of Ghana is looking forward to seek recapitalization from government. This follows losses incurred by the bank in its annual report following the domestic debt exchange program. Director of Research Philip Abrado Otu says the move can only take effect after a successful IMF program.
At the beginning of the discussions with the IMF, the issue of recap came in, and we said that, look, we are under a program, let us walk through this program, and then we can begin to talk about issues of recapitalization after the program. The program ends in 3 years' time. The Director of Finance is saying that at the 5th year to 7th year, the issue of recapitalization won't be very high on the government's agenda.
The Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, GIBA, has filed a lawsuit against the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization and KNET Ghana Limited over what they describe as contribution-linked services and charge fees to itself, with the added authority of disconnecting broadcasters from the national DTT transmissions platform on account of non-payment of fees without any legal basis or parliamentary approval. They also note that the ministry has established arbitrary fees to be paid to a digital transmission company without parliamentary approval.
Well, still with us here on Ghana Tonight. There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. On this Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, there's GIBA showing the communications minister. We have some details and reactions to it shortly. And stay with us on Ghana Tonight. Cecil Sunkwa Mills, who heads the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, GIBA, is going to be joining us later on the show. But there's a developing story which we've been following quite closely here on Ghana Tonight. Unfortunately, one person has been confirmed dead and another in critical condition after a wall collapsed on them at a construction site at Ofanko Barrier near Accra. We have details of it, and we got to know from the Ghana National Fire Service earlier today. But take a look at this. This is what we saw happen earlier, and that led to the death of one person. So that's the video of what happened earlier today when the building collapsed, and we understand that one person was trapped under the debris, and unfortunately the other who lost his life, according to the fire service, the time they pulled him out, he had no pulse. That's what you see there. Now, some of the people who had gathered there gave information of what happened. We've been there, we've interacted with the fire service, but that's the disaster site, what you're seeing there. This is an issue that we're going to be getting into quite closely here on Ghana Tonight, and get some answers to why we are having these continuous cases of building collapse. This is the third building collapse in less than 6 weeks. In the last 3 months, there's been 5 buildings that have collapsed, claiming lives in the process. So stay with us. We'll get into that here on Ghana Tonight. Stay with it. But coming up next, the Attorney General has directed the Criminal Investigations Department, CID, of the Ghana Police Service to broaden its investigations into money laundering to cover Cecilia Dapa and her husband. We have the details of the Attorney General's advice on the police docket. Now, this is an issue that we're going to be getting into now on Ghana Tonight. And the updates that we have as well is that 2 more suspects have been picked up in connection with the theft of monies and valuable items from Cecilia Dapa's house. So now we have 7 people who have been picked up. That's the house help, the other house help, the 18-year-old house help's ex-boyfriend and current boyfriend, and then the father. Now, the other 2 who have been picked up, the information we got today, the identities are not known as yet. But Deputy Superintendent of Police, DSP Emmanuel Nyamiche, told the court the 5 accused persons could not show up in court because police investigators had traveled to Tamale, where the arrest was made. That's the information we have. But the AG's advice, it contains some very interesting things. Lawyer Martin Kpebu is going to be joining us shortly, but my colleague Dennis Wedam has been going through the AG's advice. Dennis, what have we found?
Well, so interesting revelations in the AG's advice. It goes beyond the advice to state what the document says are facts or brief facts of the case. And in there, you would find that the story is not exactly as it has been told over. So you find some discrepancies, or if you'd like, some things which are quite different from what we already know. And if you recall this slide, when the story first broke, these were some of the figures that we gleaned from the charge sheets as indicative of some of the monies that were stolen or allegedly stolen from the house of the former sanitation minister. But then by the time we are done looking at the AG's advice and some of the things that have been stated in there, you would notice that it's not exactly what it is. And if what the former minister said was noticeable inconsistencies in the narrative was anything to go by, then by the time we are done with this, you perhaps will also see some of those things in there.
Noticeable inconsistencies.
Yes. So
you have the cash $1 million.
Yes, there's $1 million. There's 300,000 euros, which was allegedly stolen. The clothes and the bags, the jewelries, and all that. Now, it's important to state that at this time, on the charge sheet, it was clearly stated in there that the $1 million was the property of Cecilia Abena-Dapaah.
Yes, that's what is on the screen.
So you see count 2, and that is what is stated in there. The same thing applies to the 300,000 euros.
That's right.
And all the money that was stated in there. Now, let's see what is contained in the AG's advice and then what he says about some of the figures quoted. So what we have on the AG's advice is that what was allegedly stolen was a bag containing about $200,000, a bag containing 3,000
euros.
300,000 euros. There was 300,000 Ghana cedis contribution towards her mother's funeral. There was some 50,000 for the house, and there was some $800,000 belonging to her deceased brother, which was sent to her together with some regalia for safekeeping after his death.
I see.
Now take note of the items here. For each of them, there is some attribution as to what it was meant for or who it belongs to. It's important because the AG will make a comment or give an advice on that.
And you see, because this is not surprising, because this narrative of this money belonging to her deceased brother and then another belonging to her mother had already been put out there, referenced by some persons who had sought to give information about this.
And this is just the cash aspect of it. There's also the other bit of it, which is the non-cash, or which we will call the non-monetary, which talks about 5 different men's suits valued at $500 each. So if you do the multiplication, that's like $2,500. 5 pieces of kente and others valued at 15,000 Ghana cedis. The jewelry collection of $95,000. I
see.
Kente cloth and others valued at 56,000 Ghana cedis. So what we saw in the first charge sheet was essentially for prosecution or the investigator to put some of these monies together.
I see.
And to classify them as jewelries or kente clothes and other things and give them some values.
Because if you see the men's suit, in the charge sheet, it said the men's suit was 3,000. Now, if you multiply, it's 2,500.
2,500.
Okay.
So maybe those are the things we are beginning to see as what perhaps was described as noticeable inconsistencies. Now let's move on to what exactly the AG says about the entire process and the advice that was given to the police CID. Now look at this. That Cecilia Dapaah stated in her initial complaint that the $800,000 belonged to her deceased brother. We saw that earlier.
Yes.
And that the 300,000 cedis was a contribution towards her mother's funeral. And that was contained in a box and a bag, respectively. They were stolen, allegedly.
Okay. So that's consistent with, what you just put up?
Yes.
Pretty interesting. And this narrative, what else did we see?
So this according to the AG's advice, was confirmed by Henry Osei Kwabena, who also told the police on the same day that this complaint was made, that is on the 4th of July 2023, that he brought the bag of money to her sister for safekeeping. However, that it is important for the police to conduct independent investigations into these assertions to ascertain. Even though this is the narrative out there, the AG's advice is that the police should conduct an investigation independently to verify the claims made. Specifically, he would want them to look at the true ownership of the amount of the $800,000 US.
As in now, the AG is asking the police to confirm, otherwise, whether the money belongs to Cecilia Dapaah.
No, so the money in the complaint is said to belong to the deceased brother of the former minister. Now, the AG is saying that they should conduct an independent investigation to ascertain whether that money indeed belongs to the said person.
Okay.
But mind you, the charge sheet still contains that the money belongs to Cecilia Dapaah.
Yes.
But what the AG is working with says that the money belongs to someone else, who is Cecilia Dapaah's brother. So that investigation would have to be done. Maybe the next charge sheet will likely see some changes. Not in respect of this money alone, but other things that the AG have pointed out to, saying that the charges and the way they were couched, they may not be sustainable in court.
But the claims on that charge sheet, which you showed us earlier,
yes,
that the 1 million belongs to Cecilia Dapaah,
yes,
the police cannot just conjure it. They cannot just...
And those are some of the questions that are coming up.
Cecilia Dapaah will be the one telling the police that this money belongs to me before they put you on a charge sheet, is it not?
Unfortunately, we do not have the benefit, or the public does not have the benefit of seeing what exactly was reported to the police. So it's basically what the police have reported or have said on the original charge sheets, which is still the one that we showed earlier, and now what is emerging from the AG's office by way of an advice to the police.
Okay.
We understand the processes in court today could not go on for some reasons. If it had gone on, perhaps we would have seen if they would amend the charge sheet to reflect these changes or not. But maybe that's the next thing for us to look at. But the other thing that the AG wants them to look at with respect to the money is also the source from which the established owner of the amount of the $800,000 acquired the money. So, for instance, if they establish that the money belongs to the deceased brother, they should go further to establish the source of that money. And that whether the accused actually stole the full amount of the $800,000 from the house of the complaints. Now, this is important because the AG would say somewhere that when you do all the calculations of how the money was expended by the accused persons, you would not get the amount which was reported to have been stolen. So the AG also wants them to confirm that particular figure as well. He also goes on to indicate that on the complaints, the former Minister of State, Cecilia Dapaah, did not indicate who owned the $200,000 and then the 300,000 euros. So you mind the first slide I showed you, for each of them, there were attributions. But for these two figures, they were not attributed to anybody. So the AG wants that to be established.
Who owns the $300,000?
Yes.
The euros.
The euros and then the
$200,000.
Mind you, it is this $200,000 which has been added to the $800,000 reportedly belonging to the brother that the police put together and had a sum of $1 million.
I see. That's what
and
is in the next
according to the AG, in itself is problematic because they needed to have separated those monies so that the figures would properly align. So that's what the AG is essentially saying in this particular one. So the next one is that the total sums of money retrieved from the accused together with the value of the properties acquired does not appear to amount to the sum reported by the complainants as having been stolen. We have dealt with this already.
Indeed.
Maybe they haven't been able to account for all, or maybe there are other suspects at large. We are told that 2 have been arrested also. So we're yet to hear what comes out of that particular one. Now, the AG emphasizes that it's important to look at who owns the 200,000, the 300,000 euros, and then the source of the other money. He goes further to say that he wants the police CID to broaden their investigations on money laundering, laundering and other financial crimes to cover the complainants themselves. Now, there are also questions about, now with respect to this, the CID forwarded the docket with respect to an allegation of stealing. Now, questions that many are asking is, if you want them to broaden now investigation to cover the complainants, will that be in a separate matter, or is it going to be in respect of the same matter of stealing allegations? Because mind you, the AG, the docket in there was with respect to the trial of the 5 accused persons.
Right.
But now here's the case, the AG wants them to expand it to cover the complainants in respect of money laundering and other financial crimes. I mean, so that is also another issue that the public is
But that's
about.
also a subject of interest for the special prosecutor, is it not?
Yes, it is.
The special prosecutor is investigating the source of the money plus these issues of money laundering, correct?
Yes, so that's exactly where the problem is. Because mind you, this has been a problem for the office of the special prosecutor, not even with this one. The previous special prosecutor, Mark Nabidu, have had cause to complain about parallel investigations. At least that's how he captured it. That there have been instances where his office is investigating the matter, and then another state agency is also investigating the same matter. I mean, we have the case of the Charles Bisu as an example that we are still dealing with, where the CID had investigated the matter, done with it. The OSP attempts to investigate it. He says that that matter has already been investigated already.
I see.
So, and just to say,
no,
when we spoke to the Deputy Attorney General somewhere last week or so,
that's right,
he had indicated that the reason that the AG's department did not want to go into this matter was because it was already before the OSP. Now, one wonders why it has now become necessary. At the end of this, you realize that even at court today, there was information to the court that the AG is taking over that matter. And now investigations here are supposed to span into crimes of money laundering and other financial crimes. Clearly.
Let's seek some answers on this one, because there are some last 2 slides as well, which contains very, very important issues that the AG raised. Lawyer Martin Pebu is joining us on Zoom. Thank you so much, Lawyer Martin Pebu. Appreciate your time. Now, that concern that Dennis just raised, that the OSP is investigating money laundering, the source of the money already. Now, the AG is also now telling the CID to get into that same line of investigation as well. These parallel investigations going on, taking into consideration that Martin Amidu had already raised concerns about that, how will that impact on the outcomes of these 2 investigations, if so be?
Great. So being professionals, that's to say the OSP and then the police, I'm very optimistic that generally they would try to make sure that they do their work excellently. Yes, because as you're saying, you know, this is a high stakes case for us as Ghanaians. This is about what would I say, recent times, you know, government has been denying issues of corruption and malfeasance all this while. So this case has come at a time that, yes, even though I'm not saying we can prove any specific offense against Madame Dapa at this time, but no matter how you look at it, the case is a sweet one because Ghanaians have at least finally seen one that there is some plenty money that everybody has their suspicions very high, even though, yes, at this stage, we don't have any specific crime as such. But, yeah, so it's a sweet case. And so I'm sure the investigators, that's the OSP and the police, well know this. And so they will be doing their best. And you see, let's quickly remind ourselves, when it comes to the OSP, for him, the OSP has already made it clear to us that he's made a significant discovery, right? That there's been a significant discovery. So I always say that, look, we should start celebrating in anticipation of the report the OSP will be bringing out. Because, look, I keep saying it and I will repeat it again, that, look, Mr. Kisei Jabin is very meticulous. He's very careful in his choice of words, etc. Brilliant lawyer. So for him to have made a statement that they have made a significant finding, I tell you, we are on to something. So Ghanaians, let's celebrate that, yes, Mr. Jabin is going to deliver on this particular case. So with this statement that they've made a significant finding, it's difficult for me at this stage to begin to see that it could all go awry. It's going to awry. It's going to go awry and then just fall apart or unravel. It's difficult to imagine that. So I believe the OSP and the police will be up to the game. Yes, and especially the police, they even have a higher, task, because, in the past, because of certain cases they've been involved with when it comes to politicians, and then they didn't deliver well. So I hope that they will remember that the last time we had these kind of political cases go to them, they didn't deliver well. You remember the one involving the deputy chiefs of staffs concerning money is being taken from persons who sought to see the president, right? It went to the police CID, and then when, in circumstances that there were tapes, you remember the A+ tape where he interviewed the former CID boss, yes, and the fallout from it and all those things. So basically, of course, we will never know who is right, but the whole thing is that to the extent that now we couldn't even tell who was right in itself is a problem.
That's where the issue is, yes. And I want to hold you on to that point, because it is on the basis of that Martin Amido raised those concerns earlier about parallel investigations and how that could be a bit problematic. But, lawyer, there's another aspect of this AG advice, which is also, to some, raising questions. Now, Dennis, take us through that last part of the advice.
Well, so the AG seemed to be saying in this part of the advice that the police had gone ahead of themselves to do what he had cautioned them against somewhere earlier in the year. So he says that before proceeding to offer advice on the charges, we note that even though the monetary value of this case exceeds 500,000 cedis, you had already taken charge statements from the accused persons in the case and arraigned them before court on various offenses without recourse to this office, and that's the AG's office. That this is contrary to the earlier directives issued to you by the Attorney General, dated April 21, 2023, to submit dockets on cases in which the monetary value exceeds 500,000 to this office for advice. The AG is simply saying that they ought to have referred the docket to him for advice first before making any move.
Aye, but you see, Lawyer Martin Kpebu, maybe the AG, what he's doing could be legal, right, and appropriate. But then again, this part of the advice that, look, even before you as police went to court, you should have come to me before going to court, which is the laid down procedure, legal way. But does this also not feed into that public suspicion that if this matter had gotten to the AG first, before the police going to court, we may never have seen this, or this would have never been made public. And this issue, members of the general public would have never known about it, because this is a serious political issue. The AG is a political appointee, and the public would have been denied the benefit of this. Martin Kpebu.
Oh, well, yeah, in a democracy, it's fine. I always say that, look, we should give space to all the naysayers and the critics. Yes, if that's their estimation, we can't fault them. They do so. People will say this case will probably not have seen the light of day because of, the antecedents and the context in which we are now, the issues of the president being the clearing agent, clearing ministers and everybody of wrongdoing, etc. So you see that it fed into our social fabric that if you had seen something that will embarrass his government, the Attorney General would have to step on it so that it doesn't cause the embarrassment, etc. So I cannot fault those who have doubts that if the case hadn't leaked and had gone to the Attorney General at the first instance, then chances that we would have seen it would have been very slim. I can't fault them.
And in fact, that's where you see that those reactions as well. If you look at this aspect, that the AG is saying that, well, I've given you a directive earlier. So if this money was more than 500,000, you should have come to me first before going to court. The police decided that, look, this is a serious issue, let's go to court. And then the charge sheet is made public. That is what has even given us all the light to even talk about this matter. Okay, so it's good that you also acknowledge the fact that you wouldn't fault others who also think same. But was it a legal, appropriate process? Yes, for the AG to give this advice. Lawyer. Hello?
Yes, because the current bill, the bill President Kufuor was running away from, we are saying that yes, and this current form, the one that they saying they will present to Parliament, it's not good enough. It's not fit for purpose, because one of the key provisions we've been fighting for, that is publication of the assets. Publication of the assets of every appointee who is to declare his assets is very crucial, because when the assets are published, then that's in the daily newspapers, Gazette, especially, and the Gazette was what we used to do even during the PNDC era, Rawlings era, which was a military regime. Yes, they used to publish for the PNDC appointees. So if the publication is done, then members of the public can then look at it, and if they find gaps, inconsistencies, then they'll be able to raise it. But currently, under our law, we are looking at the Constitution, okay, Article 287, etc. The publication is not, the declaration is not made public. The law says, the Constitution says that it will only be released to Shraj if they are doing investigations or when a court orders. So if there's a case in court and maybe it's required that they should release that person's declaration, or another one is when there's a commission of inquiry and the commission wants to see the declaration, right? Yes, so these are the limited circumstances. And so this won't help us to fight. The thing needs to be made plain. I keep saying that. So let's ask ourselves, the time the PNDC appointees were declaring their assets and they were being published, who has come to do it today? Who has been able to show that a certain PNDC appointee was shot or was robbed because of the publication of his assets? None. And this is something we were doing decades ago. Then we left it when we came into the Constitution, that's 1992. And today, as we said, even war-torn Liberia, Ms. Ocansey, we are talking about even war-torn Liberia. They publish the assets of the appointees. Then look at Central African Republic. Central African Republic, another war-torn country. Then you look at South Africa. And we are saying that we're ahead of South Africa. Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana. We said, look, we are the start of Africa. So something we were doing decades ago, we can't lose that. Let's restore it. Sankofa. So this should be very important. So we are begging the president to include that provision before they present the bill to Parliament. I understand the parliamentarians were also in support of not doing publication. Please, the parliamentarians, we beg them, they should remember our history. Let's go back into the 80s and the 90s. When Rawlings was chairman of PNDC, when he was head of state, they published these assets. I know former secretaries during the PNDC era. I've seen their declarations. Those former PNDC secretaries, they are walking in town, free men. Nobody shot them. They move about freely. Nobody came to rob them because their assets were published. So let's not deceive the general public, please. Okay. If maybe Saturday, if I'm coming, I'll look for one of the declarations and bring it.
Indeed.
The way we say,
and I'll
picture
expect
is worth
that.
1,000 words. I'll look for one of the declarations and bring it on Saturday.
Indeed.
The key points so that people will see.
Indeed. Thank you.
Let's not do this. You know, we need a publication to help us.
And exactly, and that's more reason why we're going to have to get a lot more detail into, especially how this case of the Cecilia Dapa asset declaration, conduct of the public officers bill would improve on the structures so that we get to know a bit more transparently what our resources are being used for. Lawyer Martin Pebo, appreciate your time, private legal practitioner. He is the leader of one of 3 individual bondholder groups and then also the convener for the Kumi Preko Reloaded demonstration. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, one too many buildings collapsing in this country. The latest being the collapse of a wall at Tofanko in Accra, claiming 1 life. We'll give you updates on this, plus some videos of the early hours or minutes after that collapse. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint, and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Everybody knows Acrobato. And if you know Acrobato, it means you know M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic is my pillar. Let's hear what others are saying about M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. Who will be careful M-Punch one?
Chesena mi ankasa me period no say problems wom ntina ma wo ho idea ma me papa chesena nya asem ketewa na me coin point no mo hwe me modam no mo hwe bibia na so mo meduro me fire no ene ma wo nkura mienu foforo kwa na me coin mu a eba
and everything yourself
me ma me no adwodwo eda ho a wontumi nante ene ne ko end point o mama nura ene ne ho idea watimi asori anante.
That's end point for you of Acrobato. Hello hey ohwehwe what che okay a free bra wo di end point wa dance am me call you no me Johnson sema na enkoyie person na my nyina na magina sebema na me be fie for there e ho na nyina jaresa. You heard everything. I have secret. M-Punch is my secret. M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. I'm free.
Are you ready to win solid cash every day with Cash Out? Be a proud winner of lots of cash simply by watching or listening to any of Media General stations. That's right, you are being rewarded for your loyalty. Tune in to all Media General brands. TV3, 3FM 92.7, Onia TV, Onia FM 95.1, all in Accra, Akuma FM 87.9 in Kumasi, and Connect FM 97.1 in Takrady. To enter the Cash Out raffle on your favorite Media General station, just dial *439#. Follow the prompt and pick your favorite platform to enter. Voila! You are now eligible to become one of the 10 lucky winners of a cool cash prize. Remember, this is every day, all day on your favorite Media General station. Cash out and win big! This is in partnership with Radio Entertainment Limited. This promo is regulated by the National Lottery Authority on the Caritas Lottery platform. Terms and conditions apply.
After a beautiful unveiling of this year's 16 regional representatives of Ghana's Most Beautiful, the contestants are faced with their very first task of storytelling. They will embrace the age-old tradition of storytelling, where every word carries the potential to transport us to new realms of enchantment. In this quest for narrative brilliance, our contestants have not only prepared stories that tug at their heartstrings, but also stories that ignite the spark of inspiration. Join us from the studios of TV3 this Sunday at 8 p.m. Keep your contestants in the competition by dialing *713*13# or download the TV3 reality app to vote.
GMB 2023 is sponsored by Gino Tomato Mix, GTP, Techno Camon 20 Series, AT, Pepsodent Charcoal and Lemon Infused Formula and Pepsodent Natural Herbal Formula, Geisha Moringa and Geisha Black Soup, Key Soup, Bell Pack Tissues, Sankofa Natural Spices, Vitamilk, Delight Waxy acrylic paint, Nescafe Black Tonic, Heaven Black Mosquito Spray and Coil, Enapa Foods, Freedom from Casapreco, Frutelli Calipo, Duffy's Health and Beauty, Obuasi Bitters, Nubunawo Mwankasa, Dragnet, Top Choco, Global Wings Travel and Tour.
Makeup was done by House of Tara.
It's the annual.
Welcome back to Ghana Tonight. Now, one person has been confirmed dead and another in critical condition after a wall collapsed on them at a construction site at Ofankor barrier near Accra. Now, we got a video from the Ghana National Fire Service minutes after this incident happened when they arrived at the scene. And you take a look at this.
People are currently trapped and one is here dead. As of now, one is here reported. Bulldozer. Okay. But the bulldozer, then it means it will have to break through this place. Efforts currently underway. Rescue efforts currently underway to rescue the trapped victim. A bulldozer is currently on its way here to help get rescue efforts vigorously underway to rescue the trapped victims. It's a very unfortunate situation that we find ourselves here. A very unfortunate situation. Sorry for the graphic images. So rescue activities currently underway. One of the victims is here. The other is in a very critical condition, being rescued by the local firemen. Master Joe! Challenge! Yes, very good. Take it off his head. Keep digging. And then while he takes it off the head. Right. Master Joe! One of the victims is here. Oh, where is the enemy? Boss! The back one is maybe no push. I am. Where do you see? Anyway, first. Why? Anyway, yeah. They're not a team. So the situation is at Ofankor, inside Ofankor. Master, wait, hey, wait.
Well, so we also want to thank the Ghana National Fire Service, Alex Kinate of the Public Relations Department of Ghana Fire Service, who made this video available to us when they arrived at the scene, the disaster scene earlier today. We understand it's close to a place called Roland Hotel, behind the Ofankor Post Office. And Samuel Opare Ajiman is a facility management professional. He's an architect as well. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Now, we've seen in the last 3 months, about 5 buildings collapse. Now, in your own analysis, what could be contributing to what we've seen over the period?
There are quite a number of things, that can lead to building collapsing. We've been discussing. I never even knew that one building collapsed today. It's so unfortunate. We've been discussing that for the past month or so. There has been about 2, 3, buildings collapsing, and that's so unfortunate. And tarnishes the images of some of us as building engineers and architects and facilities managers. But the problem in Ghana boils down to one or two, causes. One has to do with, professionalism on site. The other one has to do with, quack, skilled men or labor that is employed on site. The other one has to be, with the quality of materials that we use on site.
I see, but Mr. Agyemang, would you also say that some regulatory lacks has contributed to what we're seeing now? Because there are state agencies, bodies that are paid to ensure that this doesn't happen, that buildings that are being put up follow the laid down procedure and the integrity of such buildings guaranteed by such bodies, is it not?
Quickly, my brother, rightly said. And I always put, 80%, 90% of the blame on our municipal assemblies. The municipal assemblies are supposed to go around and check after giving permit. From each stage of the building, they are supposed to be there and check and give go ahead before building contractors or builders, continue with the building process. But the question is, do they do it? Sometimes the problem is also not from them. Sometimes they don't even have vehicles to go around, to do these things. Sometimes clients have to go pick them, to go and do these checks. So, there are a whole lot of problems. It comes with multiple problems. But they have to do their checks. After giving the permit for institutions, individuals to build, before they start, they are setting out, they must be there. When they finish their substructure, they must be there. When the superstructure is done, they must be there, and ensure that builders are adhering to the structural drawings, to the architectural drawings that has been given permits by them. But mostly this is not done. This is not done. You go to most of our sites, you don't see, professionals supervising the work. And so we have some of these problems.
I see, but you see, already we've seen a number of buildings go down in the last, in fact, less than 3 months in Accra and in its environs. So what response mechanism has to be initiated as quickly as possible to ensure that some of these things, even before they happen, some buildings would have had the integrity audit conducted on them by the state agencies?
My brother, rightly said. And I always put, 80%, 90% of the blame on our municipal assemblies.
Indeed.
And the municipal assemblies are supposed to go around and check after giving permit. From each stage of the building, they are supposed to be there and check and give go ahead before building contractors or builders, continue with the building process.
Even went to the site, Mr. Agyemang, we went to the site earlier, and I want you to look at this, and that would influence that proposal that you're making. That is, if there's going to be any punitive measure taken. Because even at the site, the fire service gave us some information about what could have happened and led to this. Take a look.
The late hours of Wednesday, a rather unfortunate incident happened again regarding a building collapsing on workers around the Ofankor North area, where I am at the moment. We have been told that the 3 people who were working on this side had 2 of them stuck at this particular hole, where a team from the Ghana National Fire Service actually came in to conduct an exercise. We were told by a team from the PR department that the person who has been pronounced dead was actually retrieved from this portion of the drainage system. And the other person too, who was on the other side, was also retrieved safely and has actually been rushed to the hospital for urgent treatment. Now, when you look at the upper part of this building, which you can clearly see does not have a wall covering that side, that is the wall that caved in on them when they were actually beneath this particular drainage system that had been created to take out some plywoods that actually supported the concrete, which happens to be the construction of a building that is ongoing around the Ofankor North area. Really unfortunate development happening here in Ofankor, and most of the residents were actually sad regarding this, incident that happened here. But then a member of the PR department from the Ghana National Fire Service, ADO1 Alex Kingnate, who was actually rushed into this particular premises after receiving a call from one of the residents here, has been speaking to me. And the exercise generally hasn't been an easy one, because as of the time they got here, the bodies were still stuck into the system. But then he's here to give me more insights as to what went into the exercise and how they were able to retrieve the body. So what exactly happened?
Okay, so thank you very much. When our men received a call, a distress call about people trapped, quickly our team from Abelimpe were dispatched to the scene. Upon arrival, they realized that 2 people were trapped. And you realize that when people are trapped, it's a very sensitive and dicey situation. One person, we checked the pulse, had died, and then the other person was alive. The most important thing is to sustain life. So we had to concentrate our energy on the one who was alive. And in doing so, we had to be very careful not to pull him in an inappropriate way, because then it could affect his spine. So you could rather do more harm than good in trying to rescue him. So we worked strategically to dig around him to be able to safely bring him out and handed over to the ambulance service for treatment. Then after getting him out, we had to now concentrate on retrieving the dead person. And so we realized that his leg was also stuck under the wood. So you see the wood over there. His leg was stuck there. So we had to use the bulldozer to try and create a space to be able to bring him out. And it was confirmed that he was dead. So that's an unfortunate incident that happened. And as you can see, this, if you check from the wall there, it looks like they were trying to replicate something like that over here. So they had already put in the plywood, trying to create the concrete over there to create a retaining wall. Because as you can see, this is all earth. So they needed to create a retaining wall. But it's important to note that such actions or such construction is not appropriate during the rainy season.
And that's the fire service speaking to my colleague Gordon said about that earlier when we went to the disaster scene. Mr. Operatorman, that's what's happening now. So any of you, finally, in 30 seconds, what should be done in response mechanism to these issues? And that's what has been of concern to a few other people about this happening so many times, and then we wait, and then it happens again. So immediately, what measure has to be put in place to ensure that this is addressed?
Three areas that we need to look at. I mentioned professionalism, I mentioned quality of materials, and I mentioned supervision. These are the 3 main areas that I think need to be looked at. When it has to do with materials used in building construction, today I see a lot of, materials on our market which does not meet, international standards. And I'll just take one, which is the reinforcement, or as a layperson we call it the iron rods that we use in our building constructions. Okay, there are standard sizes of iron rods. Now, our standard authority, we must ask them why we are having, iron rod of sizes which are not standard.
Right. We
have iron rods on our market today, and the size is 11.5, 10.5. I don't see that in standard iron rod sizes in building construction.
Indeed. And Mr. Samajiman, appreciate your time on this, and it sounds like we definitely will have some more questions to answer about this particular development we're seeing. But one other issue that came up this evening is the Ghana Independent Broadcast Association, that's GIBA, dragging the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization to court over the operations of the only national digital terrestrial television transmission. Now, Cecil Thomas Ni Lante Sunkwameos is president of the Ghana Independent Broadcast Association. He is joining us on Zoom. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Sunkwameos. Now, we've seen a copy of the writ, but what exactly are you going to court on this?
Thank you for this conversation. GIBA basically is in court to get a declaration for four things, as stated in the suit. First of all, we want to get a clarification for a declaration for the decision taken by the Ministry of Communications, Communication and Digitalization, establishing fees for what they call the contribution link services. That service, we believe, is null and void for want of parliamentary approval of these fees. The second one is to also look at the decision by the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization for establishing TV channel fees, okay, without parliamentary approval. And we also frown on that. That is also the second one. And then we also want a declaration in which a third party that is stated in the on the writ as the second person on the suit, which is KNet Limit, the second defendant, to collect fees for contribution linked services they've been granted permission to collect these link services by the Ministry of Communication, and also to further disconnect TV stations that do not pay this fee, which we think is not legal. And we want them to also quash the decision that has led to the disconnection of some TV stations from the DTT platform. We believe these actions taken by the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization are completely not within the legal realms of this country.
We'll definitely be following this case quite closely. See how it plays out. Appreciate your time. The Cecil Thomas Ni Lante Sunkwameos, president of the Ghana Independent Broadcast Association. They've dragged the Ministry of Communications to court for what they described as charging arbitrary fees to be paid into a Central Digital Transmission Company Limited as DTT channel hosting fees without parliamentary approval. See how this happens going forward. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. Join us same time tomorrow. On behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.